Well, what is Rojan going to say? Is he going to talk about that too? I don't remember.
Because you didn't watch the
No, I did. I did watch it. I totally did. But go ahead and say something else, and then I'll interrupt you.
Welcome to Damn It, Jim, the podcast. Your weekly adventure into the fun and fascinating world of Star Trek, the original series. I am Dana Smith, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and fellow Star Trek enthusiast, Dan Calzaretta. Good evening, Dan.
Hey, Dana. I've got good news and I've got bad news. Which would you like to hear first?
I've always been told that you're supposed to take the bad news first.
Bad news. Okay. Well, I'm not sure this is bad yet. It could be good eventually. One of our listeners, Bill Gallo, sent us a Facebook message about William Shatner's hairpiece being sold. Do you have any idea for how much, Dana? Remember last week, I think it was up to $1,350. Isn't that what it was last week?
That sounds right.
I interrupted Dana with a mouthful of pizza. We were just talking about pizza from our childhood and mentioning that one of my favorites was Tombstone pizza. God, I just used to love those things, Dana.
Yeah, you know they started serving those in bars, and that's because when you're drunk, it actually tastes good.
Well, then I must have been drunk every time I ate one of those Tombstone pizzas because in my mind, I hear two things. One, Tombstone pizzas were great. Two, Tombstone pizzas destroyed my stomach lining.
When I first met my wife and we started living together, I bought a couple Tombstone pizzas and a couple others.
Like to impress her.
Yeah. And I was actually pretty excited about it. I thought, oh man, I'm going to have Tombstone pizza, watch an old movie. And she took like one bite and said, yeah, I can't eat that. And then,
Smart.
I remembered the taste. It was, that how sense of smell is a memory activator. It was the same taste, but for some reason it didn't taste good to me now. Huh. I think that's my taste buds matured.
Sure. Yeah. Or when you had it as a kid, your taste buds were completely burned off. And your brain was saying, no, let's not do this again. Anyway, I'm not sure how we got onto that, but I think last week the wig was up to $1,350. Last Saturday was the end of the auction. What do you think the winning bid was, Dana?
I mean, it had to go up. I mean, people always wait till the end of the bidding. I'm going to say $8,700.
Wow. No. The total final bid, $13,500.
Wow.
Yeah. All I can hope to make this good news instead of bad news is that one of our listeners bought it and is going to contact us shortly. Yeah, so that's bad news, but hopefully it could turn into good news. But here is the good news, Dana. You ready for the good news? You sitting down for this?
Yeah.
We have surpassed 20,000 downloads.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a big milestone. I really want to thank all our loyal listeners for helping us get there. I'd love for them to continue to spread the word. Spread the word to tell people to listen to it, not to not listen to it.
That is awesome. It's funny. I was wondering about that today. We have some great listeners, so I'm really honored that we have so many.
Yeah, me too. So, Dana, have you heard from any other listeners?
Actually, we got quite a few comments this past week. Last week was Patterns of Force, and Mark Haley wrote, I have always been curious about the mindset of the writers and producers of this episode. Of all the subjects to choose from, why Nazis? World War II had ended only 24 years prior to the shooting of this episode. The Holocaust and other atrocities perpetrated by Hitler and the Nazis would still be fresh in people's minds. Shatner and Nimoy, both Jewish. What were their feelings about this? That's a great question. I wonder how they received the script.
And this episode, Dana, wasn't shown in Germany until like the 90s, I think, after a reunification, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Along with this, we also had a comment from Graham Cree. He said, this is one of those episodes that needs a disclaimer. Any suggestion that the Third Reich was an economic powerhouse were due to the ignorance of the writer and do not reflect the view of real historians. Another great comment. We discussed that some during the show. And then John Beeler also said, paint by numbers using Earth history in Paramount's World War II costumes, sets, and props. And he says, by the way, the Gestapo were plainclothes police. And he says, these, in parentheses, in some cases mismatched uniforms, are SS. Do the research to use the right scary Nazi word. We had mentioned Pop-Tarts a couple times.
Yeah, a couple times, yeah.
And so two of our listeners were having a discussion on Facebook, and apparently Pop-Tarts are hard to find in Canada. Can't remember if that's the unfrosted ones only. And then our friend Pam said you can't find unfrosted Pop-Tarts in Ohio at all. I was at the store the other day. I looked, I didn't see any unfrosted Pop-Tarts. And I used to love the unfrosted Pop-Tarts too. And also Randall Mannion, who's been a listener of ours for quite some time, he says it's 35 minutes of podcast and 20 minutes of so much laughter you have to go back and listen all over again.
That's nice of him to say.
Dan, do you have any listener comments?
Yeah, Dana, we got a voicemail from Lou in Canada where apparently they don't have unfrosted Pop-Tarts. And if you remember, 2 episodes ago, we were talking a little bit about James Doohan and about how friendly he was. And anyway, this is what Lou has to say about James Doohan.
Yes, I can attest to loving James Doohan. He was a lovely man. He always had time for fans. He was also a proud Canadian. I remember him showing off his Canadian passport at one of our conventions.
I do want to remind people they can give us a call. The phone number is 509-676-6298. We would love to hear from people, and if we like what we hear, we'll put it on the air. Don't forget this Damn It Jim podcast is sponsored by PhotoBucket. PhotoBucket is an American company with over 100 million registered members and hosts over 10 billion images. And Dana, you know there's a lot of Star Trek memorabilia out there on PhotoBucket.
You want to be sure your photos and videos are safe. PhotoBucket gives you one secure place to store your photo and video memories. It's easy to use and even easier to get started. Just go to photobucket.com and sign up, and you'll be storing your photos in minutes.
Use the Damn It Jim promo code when you sign up and get 1 month of PhotoBucket for free. That's a great way to try out PhotoBucket.
That's right, Dan. Plus, for a limited time, PhotoBucket is offering 1 terabyte of data to store all your Star Trek memories for just $5. PhotoBucket just gets better and better. Season 2, Episode 22, By Any Other Name. So the Enterprise is circling a planet. We see Spock, McCoy, Kirk, Lieutenant Shea, and Yeoman Thompson beam down to the planet. Spock reports no life signs. McCoy says, well, someone sent a distress signal. Thompson says she's getting a reading on 2 human forms.
One of the things, this set, though, seemed like it was one of the most complicated and intricate sets we've ever seen, right? It even has a lake.
I thought they did a nice job with it. When I first saw it, I was pretty impressed.
Yeah.
So a man and a woman come out and Kirk introduces himself. The man says, it was kind of you to respond so quickly to our distress call, but now you will surrender your ship to me. Kirk says, you have a strange sense of humor. The man touches a device on his belt, and Spock, Kirk, and McCoy are frozen. The woman touches the device on her belt, and Thompson and Shea are then frozen. The man says, I am Rojan of Kelva. Says, I am your commander from this moment on. Any efforts to resist us or to escape will be severely punished. It says, soon we and you will leave this galaxy forever. You humans must face the end of your existence as you have known it. And Rojan says, you are all paralyzed by a selective field that neutralizes nerve impulses to the voluntary muscles. He says, I will now release you. He unfreezes them, and Spock says, fascinating. And then Kirk asks, what do you want? And Rojan says, your ship, Captain. He says, we need it for a long voyage. Kirk asks where, and Rojan says, Andromeda. That is our home. Within 10 millennia, high radiation levels in our galaxy will make life there impossible.
So the Kelvan Empire sent forth ships to explore other galaxies, to search for one which our race could conquer and occupy.
I'm sorry, this galaxy is already occupied.
I kind of like that line. It's funny.
Rojan says, Captain, you think you are unconquerable and your ship impregnable, but while we've talked, we impregnated your ship. And we had a good time doing it. And he says the capture has already begun. So we go up to the Enterprise, and on the bridge, Chekhov says something is penetrating from the planet.
See? There we go.
On the bridge, they're trying to figure out what has happened when another guy appears in kind of a brown tan jumpsuit, and he freezes the whole bridge staff. And then he reports to Rojan that they have taken the ship. Kirk says, so you captured my ship? A journey to Andromeda will take thousands of years. Rojan says, We can modify your engines and the trip will only take 300 years. So Thompson steps up to the alien woman and says, you made an intergalactic journey in 300 years? And Kalinda, the alien woman, says, our ships were multi-generational design. We were born during the journey and we will die on the return trip.
I want to say something about that. Can I? Well, what is Rojan going to say? Is he going to talk about that too? I don't remember.
Because you didn't watch the episode.
No, I did. I did watch it. I totally did. But go ahead and say something else and then I'll interrupt you.
Rojan says, our mission will be completed by one of my descendants.
Kind of a cool concept, right? Star Trek has presented us really with two ways to do this very, very long distance travel. One is the multi-generational ships that they're talking about. And the other is like the Khan ship where you get frozen.
Yeah.
But they said that was old technology because now we have warp drive. But the multi-generational ship is pretty interesting to me.
A few different books I've read. I think Asimov talked about that. Arthur C. Clarke talked about that in a couple of his short stories.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was cool that they actually mentioned it. So Kirk asks, what happened to your ship? Rojan says, there is an energy barrier at the edge of your galaxy. We managed to break through it with much difficulty. Our ship was destroyed and we escaped in a life craft.
That sounds a little sketchy to me. So they got through the barrier of their galaxy, no problem. But apparently the Milky Way galaxy with its gooey nougat center is more difficult to get through.
Maybe it was an old Milky Way and kind of stale.
Those are bad. Old Milky Ways. I mean, Halloween's coming up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Milky Ways, if they're old, no.
You can't break through that.
You cannot break it. It'll break something.
Yeah.
Couple of teeth. What was your favorite Halloween candy?
Well, early on, I became allergic to peanuts. And I also then, shortly after that, I became allergic to chocolate. So they were just coming out with Reese's peanut butter cups when I became allergic to peanuts. And so that was my favorite.
But you can't eat that.
Yeah, well, that's how I found out.
Did you have to go like to the hospital or?
You know, like I don't go into anaphylactic shock or anything. It's feels more like a bad cold coming on. What about you, Dan? What was your favorite?
Milk Duds.
Oh man, yeah, I used to love Milk Duds.
And remember, they would come in those little boxes, and if you got two, you felt like you were, average. Sometimes you'd only get one, and it'd be like, what is going on in this world? But sometimes you get three.
I was just gonna say,
did you ever get a full-size candy bar?
It was always full size. They didn't have the little ones.
I really don't recall. No, to be honest, I cannot recall.
One of our neighbors was an elderly woman, really sweet. And if she didn't have candy, she would give us the change from her purse.
Wow.
Usually she did the candied apples and stuff. That was one of my favorites too.
Man, you can't do that anymore.
Give somebody change?
No. You probably can't do that either. Police would come by and be like, what are you doing? But I mean, you can't give like homemade stuff anymore. Remember popcorn balls? People would make those?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we've spent about 30 minutes on Halloween candy. I don't remember where we were. How did we even get on that?
You started it as usual. We haven't talked about the Ramble Jar in a while.
Oh, God. All right. Yeah. Hold on, Dana. I got it. Sorry. Oh, geez. This thing is heavy, Dana. All right.
Yeah, it's because you put change in it and not... you don't put dollar bills like I put in mine.
All right. I'm going to start just tossing some in here now because this episode feels like one of those.
Yeah, and we're long overdue.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. We were talking about Milky Way bars and how they're horrible when they get old. That's how it started. Okay.
So Kirk says he knows about the energy barrier at the edge of the galaxy. And he says, there is no reason to take our ship by force. He says, we can take you to the Federation. Research expeditions have cataloged hundreds of planets suitable for colonization. And Rojan responds with, we do not colonize, we conquer. There is no other way for us. So Rojan says, we can control the Federation as easily as we control you. The fate of the inferior. I love that line.
Yeah, it's a good line, yeah.
When I bring people into my office, I'm just going to say, the fate of the inferior.
And just kind of point to the door.
Yeah. Rojan orders Kalinda to take the prisoners to the holding area. It's funny because at first she just points to an area and they move over like 3 feet.
Yeah.
And I was like, please tell me that's not the holding area.
Well, that was the edge of the set. I think that's as far as it went. I don't think we've mentioned that the two other people on this landing party are both in red shirts.
Rojan looks at his hands and arms and says, these shells we have encased ourselves in, they have such heightened senses to taste, to feel, to smell.
Oh, God, Dana. We just heard this a couple episodes ago. And it's come up so many times.
Roger Corby.
He's one. And then just the one, a couple episodes with those freaking orbs.
Yeah, but they did say, you won't have the sensation of touch.
Well, no, that was the androids didn't have the touch. We talked about this.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That's what I was trying to say. That when they put their minds in these android bodies, they wouldn't have the sensation of touch.
True, that's absolutely true. Yeah. Well, just with their fingers. They didn't say touch with anything else. We don't really know. I mean, maybe their big toe had a sense of feeling in it. I don't know. And the worst nerve sensation in the world is stubbing your big freaking toe on a piece of furniture in a dark room.
Your little toe.
Oh, that is bad. Oh. That's worse. You're right. You're totally right. Because it bends and like breaks.
Oh, yeah. That feeling makes me want to throw up.
Yeah.
It hurts so bad.
Yeah.
So anyway, Rojan goes on and says, how do humans exist in these fragile cases? So next thing we see is Spock examining the bars of their cage. I did a little Christopher Walken thing there. Their cage.
That was pretty good.
We next see Spock examining the bars of their cage. How's that?
That was... Who was that again?
Christopher Walken? Yeah, he always has those pauses,
Yeah. I'd say it's about as good as most of the impressions that we hear on the show. Man, we haven't done that in a while.
Yeah, I'm sure people are happy for it. Yeah, so when you do Christopher Walken, you got to kind of also have these movements and stuff. So it's like, we next see Spock examine the bars of their cage.
The end part was good. I liked it.
Christopher Walken, awesome. Not my impersonation of him. But...
No, that's embarrassing, but...
So anyway, we next see Spock examining the bars of their cage.
Yeah, kind of a small opening into a cave, yeah.
Yeah, and Spock says the metal is similar to vibranium, but more dense, kind of like Yeoman Johnson or Thompson.
Or whatever her name is.
Yeah.
Is it Thompson or Johnson?
Thompson. Thompson asks, what do they want from us? Wasn't she listening before, Dan? Rojan spelled it all out. Yeah.
You're right, though. She was the dense one.
And then she asked, what kind of people are they? And I was thinking, the kind that steal ships and paralyze us with their belt buckles. And McCoy says they registered as human. Spock corrects him, no, doctor, more than that. They registered as perfect human life forms.
Hey, this is the first time we've ever heard this, right?
First time this episode. Yeah, that's So they see Kalinda appear by the bars of the cave.
Like she's guarding them, kind of, right?
Yeah. Kirk says to Spock, on Aminiar 7, you were able to trick one of the guards using a Vulcan mind probe. Do you think you could do it again?
Is this the first time, Dana, we've had a throwback, like a specific reference to an event in a previous episode?
Other than the knowledge of Harry Mudd. That's the only other kind of throwback that I remember.
Yeah, I don't remember anything else, so that's kind of cool.
So Spock goes to the wall and he tries to connect with Kalinda, who's just outside. Suddenly, there's a shock sound, and Spock is thrown back away from the wall. And Kalinda comes in, and Kirk grabs her from behind and gives her a karate chop to the neck, knocking her out. He removes her paralyzer, and they run out of the cave.
Yeah, hold on. That karate chop, Dana, it was like he hardly touched her.
Oh, yeah. It was like the thought of it.
Yeah, it was like a homeopathic karate chop.
So he removes her paralyzer and they run out of the cave. Kirk is quickly stopped by Hanar's paralyzer. Kalinda comes out of the cave and Rojan hands her back her paralyzer and then he unparalyzes Kirk. And he says this cannot go unpunished. He points to Shay and tells Hanar to take Shay aside. He tells Kalinda to get the woman, Thompson. Hanar hits the button on his belt and turns Thompson and Shay into these blocks.
Small, like you could fit it in the palm of your hand. Almost like a Rubik's Cube sized kind of thing.
Yeah, but they're like, what do you call it? Hexadredon, something like that.
Sure.
Hanar picks up the blocks and brings them to Rojan. Rojan says, this is the essence of what they were. And then he kind of holds his right hand out with one of the cube things in it. It says, and once crushed, and he crushes this one in his right hand, the person is dead. However, that one, and he throws the other cube across and lands on the ground, that can be restored. and Hanar hits the button on his belt, and Shay reappears. So Kirk bends down and scrapes up some of Thompson's dust. Looks very sad.
Yeah, she was not really, I mean, how did you put it?
She's kind of a throwaway character.
Literally, they threw her away. And when she was talking to Kirk in the cave, she was also kind of whiny. Maybe she learned that from McCoy. I don't know.
And she asked stupid questions. She was obviously not paying attention.
Kirk was probably thinking, damn, they could have taken McCoy.
So in the cave, McCoy asks Spock if he's okay, and Spock says he's okay, but McCoy presses, you didn't look so good when they broke that mind probe. And Spock says, I did not break it, Doctor. I was thrown away by something I've never experienced before. And Kirk says, what was it? So Spock says, a series of bizarre and exotic images bursting on my mind and consciousness. I've been attempting to isolate them, but so far I've been able to recall clearly only one. Immense beings, 100 limbs which resemble tentacles, minds of such control and capacity that each limb is capable of performing a different function.
I would have liked to have seen that creature. That would have been more fun than, them filling up some human body.
Yeah, but the special effects were on budget. There was no way that was going to happen.
That's true, yeah.
So then McCoy says, do you mean that's what the Kelvans really are? And Spock says, undoubtedly, you stupid fuck.
Once again, McCoy just gets, the wrath of, not the wrath of Khan, the wrath of Spock.
McCoy says, well, if they look that way normally, why did they adapt themselves to our bodies?
Didn't you listen to Dana? Because we didn't have the special effects budget. Somebody mabinga this bitch. We just need to start calling for people to be mabinga'd.
And Kirk says, perhaps practicality. And he says, we've got to stop them. Their only hold on us is the paralyzer field. He says, you and Bones have got to get up to the ship. And he turns back and says, Spock, you're sick. McCoy says, anyone can see he's healthy, but Kirk continues.
Vulcans have the ability to place themselves in a kind of trance, complete relaxation of every part of the mind and the body.
We find it more restful to the body than your so-called vacation.
I don't know about that. I like having vacation.
Yeah, that screw efficiency on vacation. Yeah, so Kirk orders Spock to put himself in that trance, and Spock says he must prepare, and he raises his left hand up to his brow, and a moment later he looks up and faints. So he did some quick preparation there.
Now, if he knew he was going to faint, why not just lay down?
How about preparation? I'm going to sit down because sometimes I fall when I do this standing up.
Because what if McCoy would have been like, he's always an ass to me. I'm not going to catch him. Well, it's kind of like a trust fall, right? Have you ever done one of those?
No.
Yeah, you shouldn't. I'd catch you, Dana. I would catch you.
And I'd catch you. So McCoy checks Spock and says Spock's heartbeat is slow, nearly non-existent. They call Hanar, and Hanar agrees to look at Spock. And he sees Spock, who appears unconscious, and he allows for him to be beamed up to the ship.
With McCoy.
It's implied. In sickbay, Nurse Chapel sees McCoy come in with Spock on a gurney. Corey orders 2 cc's of socoline, and I'm positive I said that wrong. Chapel starts to protest, and McCoy just orders her to do it. Then an alien in a pink jumpsuit looks on. Chapel comes back and hands McCoy the injection. McCoy orders another injection, and Chapel again protests, but McCoy insists she follows his orders. She comes back and hands him another one, and he injects Spock again.
Man, 3 shots.
It was just 2.
Oh.
It just sounded like 3 because you weren't paying attention again. So after the second shot, McCoy goes to the Kelvin and says, you see, it's a flare-up of Rigelian Cassava fever. He'll be all right in a couple of hours. And we kind of cut back to Chapel and see she's got a slight grin on her face, like she's finally starting to catch on. Back on the planet, Kalinda is smelling a flower, and she shows it to Kirk. She asks, what is it called?
Flowers. I don't know the variety.
The memory tapes tell us of such things on Kelvin. We call them sashir.
A rose by any other name.
Captain?
A quote from a great human poet, Shakespeare. That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet.
I mean, but here she is in this body. They've conquered these humans, and she's walking around picking flowers?
Well, Rojan has said that they have greater sense of smell and taste and all that stuff, and so she's probably noticing things she never noticed before.
That could be, yeah. Because in their normal form, they're made up of, what did Spock say? Hundreds of testicles?
Tentacles.
Oh, tentacles. Tentacles, okay.
Yeah. So the next thing we see is a ship pulling away from the planet. There's a woman next to Chekhov at the helm, and Chekhov says, "We've jumped to warp 8. Rojan says, "We'll go faster yet." And then he orders warp 11. In sickbay, Scotty and Spock are working on something. They say the projector is stored in engineering. So next we see engineering, the balcony room that overlooks the engineering bay, as Scotty and Spock come up the ladder. Kirk is distracting the guy in the pink jumpsuit who's down in engineering.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a projector. It looks like a bunch of steel tubes.
He says the material surrounding the projector is impervious to any weapon on the ship. And Scotty looks defeated, and Spock adds, "There is only one other possibility, Mr. Scott. But the final decision, of course, must be the captain's." And Scott says, "I see what you're getting at. I can't say I like it."
That was good. That was better than Christopher Walken.
So the next thing we see is Kirk, Spock, and Scotty as they get on a turbo lift. Spock tells Kirk of the problem with the casing, but adds they have laid the groundwork for the only logical alternative. And Spock says the barrier we must penetrate is composed of negative energy.
See, there's that word penetrate. It's shown up in this episode at least 3 times.
Yeah, and what was it? The last one showed up 3 times?
Yeah, so I'm wondering if it's a tie or maybe we're going to get a 4th penetration happening here.
I think the writers were only allowed to use 3 penetrations.
So this is it.
Yeah. And Kirk says, "What?" Spock says, "When we engage the barrier, the ship will explode. The Kelvans will be stopped here." And Kirk says, "Are you mad?"
Now, hold on. Kirk has ordered the possible destruction of the ship in other episodes, Dana.
What's when it's his decision?
Yeah, his idea, yeah.
Scotty, Kirk, and Spock show up on the bridge, and Rojan tells them they are approaching the barrier. Scotty takes his place and sits with his finger poised over a button. As they go into the barrier, Spock reports negative radiation, negative energy. Hint, hint.
Negative.
Negative, which is the opposite of positive. Scotty says, "Outside hull is over 2,000 degrees. We go back to Spock and then to Kirk. The music intensifies. Finally, Kirk says, "Hold your position."
He says that a lot.
Yeah, just not on the bridge usually. Kirk seems to breathe a sigh of relief just as Chekhov announces they've made it through the barrier.
So they got full penetration through that barrier.
Yeah, and they weren't protected, Dan. So Rojan says to Hanar, "Start the neutralizing operation." Kirk asks, "What's the neutralizing operation?"
Well, if you would have been listening on the planet, like Johnson apparently was. Was it Johnson? Thompson. Like apparently Dan not listening to the episode and Thompson, that's what being neutralized means.
So Rojan explains there are too many people on the ship, and now that they are through the barrier, they won't need all the people. And so they'll neutralize all non-essential personnel. So the next thing we see is Kirk walking down the corridor. He turns a corner and sees all these blocks on the floor with like some tricorders and tablets next to them. I was wondering, wouldn't something like jewelry have fallen off as well? You know, somebody's glass eye. So Kirk enters the conference room where McCoy, Scotty, and Spock are sitting. Spock says, "We 4 are the only ones the Kelvans consider essential." McCoy jumps on Kirk saying, "Scotty tells me you could have blown up the whole ship and stopped them." Kirk says, "I couldn't." The door opens and they turn to see the guy in the pink jumpsuit. He asks why they eat the bulk material, the colored cubes of food we're so fond of, Dan.
Each of them have a plate of that sitting in front of them.
Yeah. And he holds up a pillbox and says, "We only need these." McCoy says, "Don't knock it until you've tried it." And he helps the guy get a plate of food, and the guy seems to like it. And he's like, tasty.
If he doesn't know about eating, just wait till he finds out about taking a shit.
And Spock says, "Since they have taken human form, they are therefore having human reactions." And McCoy says if he keeps reacting like that, he's going to need a diet.
Okay, McCoy, that was a good line. We're going to hold off on the slapping.
Kirk says if they all respond to stimulation of the senses, then maybe we can distract them.
They can't have been able to handle the senses yet. If we can confuse them enough, we can get those devices from their belts. Look for any way to stimulate the senses.
And you know what Kirk is thinking. And Scotty says, "I can think of one way to right off." And he goes over to Tomar and says, "Lad, you're going to need something to wash that down with. Have you ever tried any Saudi and brandy?" Tomar kind of looks up at him kind of dumbfounded and shakes his head no.
Space is not just the final frontier. Actually, space, as in available memory, can be an annoying frontier.
The PhotoBucket app works its magic on Android and iOS devices. It automatically backs up every photo and video you take on your smartphone while syncing it all to your desktop, tablet, and other devices.
PhotoBucket works with you to make sure you don't miss an important picture. Right now, PhotoBucket is offering 1 terabyte of storage for $5. Couple that with the auto backup feature, and you'll have all the space you need.
If your phone has limited space, you don't have to worry because PhotoBucket has enough space for all the pictures and videos you want to take.
And don't forget that PhotoBucket works with all your social media platforms and allows you to post, text, or email right from your files.
Communication in this day and age is critical, Dan, and PhotoBucket makes it easier than ever.
Dana, we have seen that communication is vital in the 23rd century. Let's get back to the episode and see what's next.
So in sickbay, they've got the plan moving forward. McCoy is talking to Hanar and saying he's anemic from only taking pills. And he gives him an injection of high-potency vitamins and comments, and eat some solid food. We go into Scotty's quarters. We see a red and black tartan hangs on the wall along with a couple of ancient medieval knight helmets. And Tomar is finishing the Saurian brandy. Next, we go into a room as Kirk sees Kalinda. He apologizes for hitting her.
Well, I don't usually go around beating up beautiful women.
Why not?
Well, there are better things for men and women to do.
Like what?
And so he touches her shoulder and asks, "Is this where I hit you?" and kisses her neck. He says, "Is that better?" And she says, "Is that intended as a remedy?" He turns her so she's facing him and says, "No, but this is." And he kisses her full on the mouth. When they break the kiss, she asks, "Is there significance to this action?" Kirk says, "Among humans, it's meant to express warmth and love." She says, "Are you trying to seduce me? I have been studying you. This business of love, you have devoted much literature to it. Why do you build such a mystique around simple bodily functions?" And Kalinda says, "Curious, let me try." And so she kisses him just as Rojan enters. And then Kirk leaves. Rojan looks at Kalinda and says, "What did he want here?" And Kalinda says, "He came to apologize for hitting me."
So, Dana, to stimulate the senses, McCoy is using like some doctoring stuff, right? Giving that guy shots. Scotty's using alcohol to get the one guy drunk. And Kirk is using his warp drive.
His penetrating personality. So back in Scotty's quarters, we see another bottle is being finished. Tomar asks for more, and Scotty wants to oblige, so he goes off to find more.
And Scotty is seeming pretty drunk, but the other guy's not seeming as drunk. Is that how you kind of took it?
Yeah, he's drunk, but not as drunk as Scotty. So next we see Spock and Rojan playing 3D chess. Rojan is asking about this kiss, and Spock says it is something humans find appealing and is something they do to show affection. And Spock says, "You're demonstrating symptoms of jealousy."
So Spock is using psychology.
Yeah, and Rojan is not able to pay attention to the chess game. In Scotty's quarters, the latest bottle is empty, and Tomar is asking for more. Scotty says all he has is some very, very old scotch.
And he's kind of crying, right?
So Scotty pulls out this dusty bottle from behind one of the pieces of armor, and he seems quite sad, but he pours some for Tomar. In the conference room, Kirk is wondering whether or not their plan is working. Just then, Kalinda comes in. She says she wants to speak to Kirk. McCoy and Spock leave, and she says she's been studying the mystique surrounding biological functions.
You realize humans are overly preoccupied with the subject.
Yes, we do think a great deal about it.
I've done some supplemental reading on it, and,
You have a question?
yes. I was wondering, would you please apologize to me again?
Oh, God, Dana. Oh, my God.
Kirk and Kalinda are kissing. She seems to be enjoying it now. Rojan comes in on Kirk and Kalinda kissing. He insists that Kalinda leaves Kirk alone. So Rojan pushes Kirk away and says, "You will release her." And Kirk slaps him, and Rojan goes nuts.
Wait, what does he do?
Oh, sorry. He mabinga'd him.
Thank you. I love that term. I love it.
And then we get 2 stunt doubles.
Oh, God. Not even close to being doubles, Dana.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, okay, we get 2 stunt men in uniforms similar to what Kirk and Rojan were wearing.
Probably not even exact if we really looked at it.
And Kirk's stunt double, I think he had red hair.
He did kind of have red hair, yeah.
So as they fight, Kirk says, you're acting like you're human. Look what happened in the short time you've been exposed to us. What do you think will happen in 300 years? When the ship gets to Kelvin, you'll be human. Enemies, alien to Kelvin. Kirk goes on to say that there are planets you can inhabit. We can bring your problem to the Federation. Rojan stops struggling against Kirk. He says, you do that? He says, you would extend welcome to invaders? Kirk lets him go and says, no, but we would welcome friends.
Oh, God. Okay, I got a couple problems. I mean, with this scene. I mean, I have problems, but first off, this is something that Kirk said to him in the very beginning of the episode. Okay, he said we got to conquer. And there's a little fight where there's not even really any punching going on. And here's a race that is used to conquering, and he's going to give up that easily.
Yeah, and Kirk's like, oh, let's be all buddies. And it's like, you've reduced 99% of my crew to salt blocks.
Yeah, and you smashed one of them. And then they say they'll send some kind of fast ship to the Kelvin homeworld and work out the details.
What? Well, no,
did you not watch this episode, Dana? He says that in there. So that doesn't make sense to me.
So Rojan goes to the intercom and tells his crew he is turning the ship back over to Kirk. And Kirk says, turn the ship around. We're going home. And that's how it ends, Dan.
Dana, you had some information about some of the actors in this episode.
Yeah, Dan, I was thinking that Rojan looked very familiar. His name is Warren Stevens, and he's made over 150 television appearances, everything from Gunsmoke to Land of the Giants. He had a long career, including several movies, including The Forbidden Planet, one of my favorites, and The Barefoot Contessa.
Wait, I thought she was a chef on, the internet.
That's a different Contessa.
Oh, okay. But she is barefoot. Here's the thing, though, about a chef being barefoot. No, you got to have shoes. Otherwise, that's gross.
I agree. So he was just one of those actors you saw a lot, but probably never knew his name. He continued acting well into his 80s. He died in 2012 at the age of 92. Barbara Boucher was born in Czechoslovakia, which was actually part of Germany when she was born. But she came to America after World War II as a child. When she was a teenager, she worked as a dancer on the teen-targeted dance show K-Pix Dance Party. She moved to Hollywood and started to work in a couple of TV shows, and she shows up in the James Bond spoof Casino Royale. She then shows up in a John Wayne movie. What do I say? These women showed up in either a John Wayne movie or an Elvis movie. Afterwards, she did the usual gambit of TV shows, Voyages Beyond the Sea, Man from U.N.C.L.E., etc., and she appeared semi-nude in 2 issues of Playboy magazine. Since the 70s, she has lived in Italy, where she gained broad appeal by starring in several Italian B movies, and most of those movies appear to have a decent amount of nudity in them, Dan, which featured her.
Can we get them?
Do you think we'd get her on the show?
I think so. You said that she was in Italy and made these films. I did love the names of some of these films. They were kind of cult horror movies. One was Don't Torture a Duckling. In case people didn't get it, it was Don't Torture a Duckling. The French Sex Murders. A gangster film called Cry of the Prostitute. She was also in an action film called Death Rage and a thriller called The Hook. Those sound like they could have all won the best picture for foreign film, Dana. And not only was she in Playboy, in 1983, she posed nude, full on, for the Italian edition of Penthouse magazine. That's a one of spicy meatball.
Do you have anything else you want to discuss, Dan, before we move on?
Yeah, the guy who wrote the script, it had a much darker ending than the filmed episode. And I guess DC Fontana had to come in to kind of rewrite it. But here are a couple things that she wanted to have happen, which I would have loved to have seen. The Kelvans executed 10 Enterprise crew members by opening the shuttle bay door and letting them get sucked into space. That would have been awesome. And then apparently Kirk is also put through hellish torture, which also could have been fun. And then finally, to top it all off, Dana, crew members were chosen to mate with each other. Okay. And Kirk apparently was paired with Yeoman Thompson, and then they would breed slaves for the Kelvans. Now, I don't know how he breeds with this multi-sided cube kind of thing, but Roddenberry, of course, didn't like it, and DC Fontana came in and saved the day, apparently. Dane, I'm sure you've got something brilliant in the themes and dilemmas department.
To me, this is, it's weird because it started out pretty serious, but became comedic as it went on. And so to me, it was the dilemma of saving the ship, teaching the Kelvans what it meant to be human. Dan, do you have a theme or dilemma you want to discuss?
You know, Dana, I had a hard time with picking anything out. Certainly nothing deep. I guess one one dilemma is, what does a species do when it knows it's going extinct? Like, is there a way out of that? That's the only thing I could really think of. Should we move on to the best and worst parts, Dana?
Yeah, please.
How about a best part for you?
Scotty getting Tomar drunk. It was fun. We got to see Scotty's quarters, and drinking more than one bottle of some kind of whiskey or brandy or whatever made me kind of want to vomit, but it was fun anyway. How about a best part for you, Dan?
Kirk apologizing to Kalinda. I enjoyed that part.
Bet he did too.
How about another best part for you, Dana?
I liked the idea of turning the crew into blocks of basic human chemicals. And I remember seeing this when I was younger and asking my biology teacher, like in 7th or 8th grade. And he said, if you broke down all your chemical components in the body, he says it would be less than like a pound. And he says, yeah, he goes, it could be, a block of something like that. And so maybe he was just saying that, get me to shut up or something, but I thought that was fascinating.
You'd be like, Dana, you're less than a pound. Most people is going to be like 30 pounds. Most of it's brain, but...
But you got a lot of personality. Yeah.
It doesn't weigh much, but, it's...
So do you have another best part, Dan?
I really like the special effect of the Enterprise flying toward the Andromeda Galaxy. Just thought that was kind of cool. How about a worst part for you?
How it went from serious to comedic. I mean, it starts off very serious. Thompson dying and stuff. And then at the end, they kind of like eschew everything that happened. And it's a comedy. It's like they couldn't figure out how to end it and didn't want to have a violent ending. So they went with something more funny and heartwarming or something. How about you? Do you have a worst part?
Somewhat related. I thought the ending seemed really contrived, but how is it that we have this race of people that have conquered other races and Rojan is made to change his mind because he's in a simple headlock? Didn't make any sense to me, Dana. How about another worst part for you?
We don't see any of the crew get rehumanized from the blocks of chemicals. Think, if I'd been Kirk before I even said turn around, it's like, I'd be like, give me my fucking crew back.
But make McCoy into a block because he's annoying me.
Yeah. Do you have another worst part for us, Dan?
Well, it does have to do with McCoy. He complains to Kirk about not blowing up the ship. Kirk should have just mabinged him right there. Dana, how about another worst part for you?
Only the chief engineer, the science officer, the captain, and the doctor, they're the only essential crew members.
Yeah, just wait till the Federation finds out that they can run a ship with 4 people. They can fire 426 and then save a ton of money.
That's so true.
So, Dana, what happened on this day in history?
Well, Dan, this was released on February 23rd, 1968. The number one song in the U.S. is still Love is Blue by Paul Marriott and his orchestra.
Wow.
In the U.K., the number one song was Cinderella Rockefeller by Esther and Abby Oforum.
That doesn't ring a bell.
The newly incorporated Hyundai Motor Company of South Korea, represented by its president Chung Ju-young, signed an agreement with the Ford Motor Company of the United States for a joint venture in which Ford would supply Hyundai with technology and equipment to construct a plant in Ulsan in return for a percentage of the profits. Also on this date, the first victim of a Scottish serial killer nicknamed Bible John was found in Glasgow. Patricia Docker, a 25-year-old nurse, had been raped and strangled after having last been seen at a Glasgow dance hall.
Wow, that's dark. Do you think Bible John got the idea from the Star Trek Wolf in the Fold episode? Because Scotty's Scottish.
Yeah, that'd be jacked up.
Did anyone look into this, Dana? Scotland Yard. I mean, are they on the case or not?
And finally, Dan, and in a positive note, Wilt Chamberlain became the first NBAer to score 25,000 points in one game. Hey, before we get to the counts, Dan, we want to once again thank our sponsor, PhotoBucket.
That's right, Dana, PhotoBucket, where memories come alive. The go-to platform for all your photo and video sharing needs.
Since 2003, PhotoBucket has been safeguarding memories with backup cloud storage. We're talking over 17 billion photos and videos from around the world, all perfectly preserved while maintaining a carbon neutral footprint because they love our planet as much as they love their customers.
So whether you're a dedicated dedicated Trekkie or just discovering the wonders of the Star Trek universe, you are going to want to keep those memories for years to come. Every picture and video you take today is a memory you'll treasure tomorrow. That's something PhotoBucket takes seriously, and what makes PhotoBucket different. Compression-free backup cloud storage means your pictures and videos won't lose quality over time.
So sign up today and remember to use the code DAMNITJIM for a free month of PhotoBucket when you sign up. Dan, let's go to the counts.
All right, Dana, how about the dead crewman count?
This week we did have one. It was Yeoman Thompson. She bit the dust, quite literally. So that puts us at 45.
How about the shirtless Kirk, ripped shirt Kirk count?
None. I was hoping that that fight with Rojan at the end was going to give us one more, but we're still stuck at 17.
The he's dead count?
Nothing this week. We're still stuck at 14.
I'm a doctor, not a fill in the blank.
No. So we're stuck at 8, Dan.
The supreme being count?
You know, I considered this briefly for a minute, but these people were not supreme, even though, of course, they're intellectually more powerful than us and, perfect human specimens at all that, but they're not supreme beings. So we're still at 10.
All right. Violation of the Prime Directive?
Nothing this week. So we're stuck at 8.
And finally, the taking over of the Enterprise count.
Oh, they did it with quite ease, Dan. Got 1 this week. I guess you can't take it over multiple times, but so we are now at 9.
All right, so we got 2 this week, right, Dana?
Yeah, that's a good week.
Well, Dana, I had a great time, again, talking about this episode. We did kind of ramble a bit, and the jar did get several deposits of coins. Those jars are filling up.
I was thinking we can still try to buy the toupee from whoever bought it.
Oh, we could maybe count up that change. Hey, by the way, if you are the person who bought the toupee and you bought it for us, get a hold of us. Call us. You can call us 509-676-6298. We told you we'd pay for shipping, probably even pay for, $100 or so of insurance. Get a hold of us. We'd love to hear from you.
And even if you didn't buy it for us, we'd love to have you on the show and talk to you about why you did buy the toupee.
That would be great. Yeah, it'd be a great interview, I think.
It'd be hairy.
Did you just come up with that off the top of your head? All right, Dana, I had a great time. Once again, thanks to all of our listeners for writing and for calling. Again, please give us a phone call. We'd love to hear from you. And what do we got coming up next week, Dana?
Dan, next week is the Omega Glory.
All right. Have a great weekend, Dana.
Okay, Dan, as always, thanks for getting together and talking about Star Trek. It's always fun to review these episodes. And thanks to all of our listeners who write in and say wonderful things about us. Greatly appreciate that. Until we meet again, live long and prosper.
Thanks once again for listening to Damn It Jim, the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at damnitjimpodcast@gmail.com or join the discussion on Facebook, Instagram, X, or YouTube. You can also call the Damn It Jim hotline at 509-676-6298. Make sure to join Dana and Dan next week for the Omega Glory. Enjoy the rest of your week, and until we see you again, remember to live long and prosper. This has been a Ramble Jar production.